Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tips. I'm your host, Marin Smith, content manager here at Grow Schools, and we're here Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern for 10 minutes discussing the biggest challenges facing school leaders. And this week, we have a special episode with two of my colleagues joining me, Ashley and Tony. Thanks for being here, both.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
We're discussing enrollment-informed facility planning today. So this is such an important topic because, as we've talked about a lot, facility decisions are some of the biggest investments that schools make. And so understanding how to align that physical space and the decisions around it with your enrollment pipeline and can really help schools position themselves for sustainable growth, which is what we're all about here at Grow Schools. So let's start with the basics. Ashley, my first question is for you, which is how should schools use enrollment data and projections to evaluate whether their current facility is adequate for their growth plans? And sort of off of that, what are the specific metrics that they should track when they're trying to make those decisions?
Yeah, so schools should definitely be looking at least the last, 5 to 10 years of historic enrollment data, as well as kind of what's happening at each grade level. Is there always a drop in, from 6th to 7th grade or something like that? Look for those patterns of attrition, or look for patterns of, larger class sizes, maybe at the lower grade levels. I'd also look at, kind of demographic changes and housing development and things like that are happening in your area, whether your area is growing or not, or birth rates are declining or not. Also think about, definitely track things like your wait list, but also whether that wait list is actually converting and at what rate, because it can look great on paper to have a deep wait list, but if a lot of those students, when you do have attrition, if they don't actually convert, which is something I've seen happen to schools, it's maybe not, a great indicator of the actual health of your enrollment. I think usually, and Tony, tell me if I'm wrong, I think it's usually aiming for about 80% of your ADA as you plan. So if you are targeting 500 ADA, then having, 400 or more ADA puts you in pretty good shape.
ADA, for those listening who may not know what that means, can you break that down for us?
Average daily attendance?
Yeah, average daily.
Yeah, so how many kids are actually in seats each day?
Yeah. Great tips. Tony, next question is for you, which is this question around timing. So, school leaders done the work that Ashley just described. How can schools determine the optimal timing for that facility investment based on the pipeline and those metrics that Ashley just described for us?
Yeah, so I always encourage school leaders to really be thinking far out into the future. So this answer assumes that either you're at capacity or you've got a strong wait list, and we're really at a nice consistent enrollment level. Then you want to think, gosh, at least 2 years away from either your lease coming up or whatever that decision point is. Things always take longer. It can be harder to find the space that you're looking for. It might be hard to find the financing vehicle that you're looking for. So giving yourself plenty of time, at least 2 years or so. It's going to be stressful enough without a timeline that's bunching up on you. So try to give yourself as much wiggle room as possible when you're starting to look at that.
Yeah.
Then beyond that, of course, you want to try to time it so much so that any improvements to a new facility can be done while you're still in your existing facility, so that you can try to make that change over from one facility to another during a natural break period, hopefully most likely during the summer.
Yeah, such an important thing I know that school leaders think about when they're considering these decisions is how can I do this without disrupting the most important thing, which is educating kids. That's of utmost importance. Another question for you, Tony, for schools that are in leased spaces, how should enrollment projections influence decisions like lease renewal versus making that decision for a property purchase?
Yeah, it's different for every school, but a couple of high-level things to think about. If you're still in growth mode, in the infancy, let's say you got into a building and there was a 3-year lease. Year one, you were year zero, just getting things started. So you didn't have students in the building. And now we're only 2 years into your growth. Might be a good idea to lease that building again for another couple of years, just to finish off that growth and kind of get to full enrollment. If you're a school that has been in that space for a long time, let's say 10 years, and you've got steady enrollment, everything's rolling just fine, might be time to start thinking about, the permanent home and taking out that lease and having either, having some sort of other financing vehicle there that can be permanent and help the school build wealth. But yeah, really depends on each individual school's position, the timing of where their growth is at, and how soon they want to be in that home.
Yeah, it's tricky because there's a bit of a future, crystal ball type thinking that school leaders have to do. And I guess my next question is for both of you. I'll start with you, Tony, about, how should schools balance current enrollment reality with future projections? Of course, those are projections that can be based on data, but to some extent, there's always variables that you can't anticipate at play when it comes to those facility expansions, particularly.
Yeah, it's, sometimes it's a leap of faith, right? You've got to, you believe in what you have, and you can look back at the past couple of years and say, okay, great, we've been doing good. So it's time to make these decisions. Oftentimes partnering with an organization that has the resources of data that you may not have. Think a commercial real estate broker, think, any of those. You may sometimes even a marketer might have these data points that can help you project out a little bit what's going to happen in the community around you. Ashley talked about a new housing development. We were working with a school where there was a new processing plant that was going to be coming and attracting some jobs to that area. These are all things to start thinking about when you're starting to say, okay, great, well, our enrollment's been here, but is there going to be a big factor on the other side that helps move that enrollment? So kind of taking that whole picture when you're making these decisions.
Yeah. Anything to add there, Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, there's other, you should also be thinking, I think, about policy changes. Like a lot of California schools right now are all having to add TK. So are you going to maybe need to add grades at some point? But that can actually really help enrollment. We've seen a lot of schools see smaller kindergarten classes than they used to see, just as things kind of change and people have fewer kids. So adding TK, adding in a whole other grade level can be a real boon to their enrollment, kind of long term.
Yeah. Gosh, I wish there was TK in my state. That's all I'll say as a parent. But that's a great point about adding an entire batch of kids at that younger age bracket. Last question, and I'll toggle back to you, Tony, to finish this up here. For schools considering building ownership, what are some enrollment benchmarks that suggest readiness for that investment? Get real specific.
Yeah, I think the of course rule at hand is you're there. You've met your enrollment targets consistently for a number of years. I mean, we're an underwriting organization. We look at 3 to 5 years worth of meeting those enrollment projections and those enrollment targets. Of course, a blip here and there is not the end of the world, but we want to make sure that you're definitely feeling it straight. The other thing that I talk to schools about when you're thinking about this investment, a lot of times we look at this from an emotional side, right? And, you think of home ownership and making that investment and building that generational wealth. The same can apply for a charter school, but a charter school's overall mission is not always to have the building. So are you at a point in your growth where every other box is checked? And what I mean by that is, are you fulfilling your mission as a school for all of your students? Are you able to afford the Chromebooks for everybody? Do you have the science lab if you're a STEM school? Do you have a large performing arts? Have we gotten everything else checked off in these, in your mission before then turning to building ownership? And if you've gotten all the way there and you've got strong enrollment, absolutely, let's go for it. Now you've kind of gotten there. And if you haven't, that's okay too. There are other ways to stay, to stay in your building, of which our organization helps schools all the time with. But it might be time to look at a different one. That's not to say you don't secure your space long term. Just whether it's building ownership, long term lease, there are different options you might want to consider.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Ashley and Tony, I want to thank you both for sharing all of your insights today. As I said, we're here Tuesdays, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Really great to speak with both of you. And for those of you watching, you can learn more about enrollment strategy, facility planning. We have a lot of supportive materials on our website. Just head over to growschools.com. So thanks again to Ashley and Tony for being here, and we'll see you next time.